Hello, my dear audience. Today we're gonna visit the most minimalist house in the world. One floor, one roof, supported by columns and with walls of glass. That is a summary of this design. If you remove anything, it won't be a house anymore. The Farnsworth home is an extreme example of the international style, an architecture movement known for its straight lines, open floor plans, large windows and no decorations, constructed with industrial materials like steel, glass and concrete. Of all the international style architects, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe was the most formal and most Puritan, taking the definition of the international style to the extreme. Mies van der Rohe believed that just the function of the construction and nothing more was enough to create a beautiful home. Anything more was an unnecessary distraction. The house is also one of the very few occasions in history where an architect was given complete creative freedom by his commissioner. It was Edith Farnsworth, a medical professor from Chicago, who commissioned this design as a weekend home. In 1945 she met Mies van der Rohe, and the two became friends. Van der Rohe had immigrated from Germany in 1948, and he was already famous for designing furniture and many modernist houses that were all located in Europe. In most of his previous designs, Mies van der Rohe had to face budget restrictions or requirements of the client. This time, however, Van der Rohe had the opportunity to design a house exactly the way he wanted it to be. Edith Farnsworth, an admirer of modern art, had a complete trust in her architect. Van der Rohe made the design already in 1945, but it took 5 years for Farnsworth to collect the funds, and only in 1950 the construction started, which lasted till 1951. Very unique is that Van der Rohe also functioned as the general contractor, overseeing the entire construction process. The steel structure was plug welded, a technique in which holes were drilled into one beam with the other beam welded to it through the holes. Here is an animation that shows how the house was made, step by step. The first step in the construction was the placing of the concrete footings. On these foundations, 14 steel H-beams were vertically placed. 8 of them have a height of 15 feet and support the main house, while 6 of them are 3 feet tall and support the terrace. 2 rectilinear frames of C-channel beams were connected to the columns by plug welding. For further strength, a number of 17 beams was placed horizontally. 7 of them support the terrace and 10 support the floor. A second frame of 4 C-channel beams was connected to the top of the columns. And again 10 H-beams were placed in the width. The underside of the floor was made by placing concrete slabs on the ridges of the steel H-beams. The upper part of the floor was made with concrete floor plates that are resting on the top of the same H-beams. The roof was made by placing concrete slabs on top of the frame. A second roof of insulation material was laid down over the concrete roof plate, with grind pebbles for extra insulation. The lowered ceiling was made by attaching plaster boards to the beams that were stuck with plaster to conceal the lines of the different boards. The spaces between the beams were filled in with glass plates, 9.6 feet tall and 10.6 feet wide. A total of 14 of these identical glass plates was used. An exception are the 4 corners, where the sheets are only 6 feet wide. The bathrooms and kitchen were created in a wooden structure that was placed in the open space, like a small house in a larger house. The concrete floor was covered with travertine tiles. Tiles on the balcony and terrace are identical with the tiles inside, mixing interior with exterior. Although this animation might look simple, the construction process was extremely difficult and very expensive. Many techniques were still a novelty at the time. This made the project one big experiment that easily surpassed the estimated costs. To make matters worse, the Korean War broke out. This caused an increasing demand for steel, which led to an inflation of the building materials. The whole situation led to an overrun of the budget from $59,000 to $74,000. A budget difference that Farnsworth simply couldn't afford. When it became clear that Farnsworth couldn't meet her payment obligations, Rohe decided to file a lawsuit against her. Farnsworth then responded with a countersuit for damages due to the alleged malpractice. The architect's attorneys came up with evidence that Farnsworth had approved the potential budget increases, and Farnsworth's malpractice accusations were dismissed as unsubstantiated. Another conflict was about the difference in vision between Farnsworth and Mies van der Rohe. Of course, she had given him complete creative freedom, but still, she believed that he would respect her wishes, and she never would have imagined an end result so far removed from what she had in mind. Needless to say, Farnsworth regretted the freedom she had given Mies van der Rohe, and she was very disappointed. She disliked the complete lack of privacy. The absence of internal walls made the house sound hollow, and she never felt comfortable sleeping in an open space. But her biggest complaint was the climate control. During the freezing winters, the temperatures inside the single-pane glass house became extremely cold, while in the summers, the lack of open windows and no air conditioning made it extremely hot, almost like a greenhouse. And on rainy days, the roof was leaking. The worst problem today is not the fault of Mies van der Rohe, but is caused by climate change. The house is placed very close to the river, and the danger of flooding was already taken in consideration during the construction. That's why the house is elevated 5 feet above ground level. In the 1950s, a maximum flood of 20 inches was expected, but it soon became apparent that the water level could reach much higher, up to 7 feet, and the house was damaged by water multiple times. Over the years, various plans were devised to save the house from flooding, including a relocation to a higher, safer place further away from the river, and even a mechanical system that could elevate the entire structure when the water level was rising. As for today, none of these plans is ever realized, and the danger of flooding is still a serious problem. All these problems made an end to the friendship between Edith and Ludwig, and Farnsworth publicly criticized him in the media over the years. Mies van der Rohe's reputation was damaged, and he only designed 2 homes afterwards. Luckily, van der Rohe restored his reputation with the design of many office and public buildings, including the famous Seagram building in New York, which has many constructional similarities with the Farnsworth House. Despite all the hardship, Edith Farnsworth lived each weekend in her home for 21 years, until she immigrated to Italy and sold it to Peter Palumbo, who used the house to showcase his art collection, not as a home. Palumbo finally sold the property in 2003 to the National Trust for Historic Preservation and Landmarks Illinois, 2 foundations who maintain the house as a museum. Today it is open for public, but for those who are never been able to visit, I made this video. So let's take a look inside. Farnsworth House is located outside the small town of Plano, 60 miles driving from Chicago, and it's placed on a very isolated 9-acre property. The original entrance of the property was here. With this pathway leading up to the house, the terrace is facing the river, and because the pathway doesn't reach all the way to the terrace, you need to walk over the lawn. Mies van Rohe believed that architecture should contrast nature, isolating the man-made construction from the surrounding landscape, and focus all the attention on the design. This is the opposite of organic architecture, a movement that tries to integrate the design in the nature. Therefore, the house is painted white, which accentuates the contrast between the straight lines of the construction and the curving lines of nature. Because the grass field near the river is sometimes swampy, there is an elevated terrace, so you can still sit in the sun with dry feet. The terrace functions as a transition between the home and the ground, like a bridge between nature and architecture. Behind it is the higher terrace, where you can sit in the shadow or out of the rain. 2 small stairs make it possible to step on the terraces. The stairs are designed perfectly in style with the rest of the house. Steel beams are diagonally placed, with T-beams arc-welded horizontally against it. Stone tiles are resting on the T-beams. The upper terrace or balcony is extremely minimal. No details and no balustrades. Only a white floor and a white ceiling, with all the attention focused on the green color of the trees, plants and grass. A problem with the riverside environment are the many mosquitoes in the summer. For protection, the balcony was for many years enclosed by a mosquito fence. This was practical, but it took away the striking visuals of the design. So luckily the screen porch was removed. The house has no back door or emergency exit, only a double swinging glass front door. The house measures 77 by 29 feet, while the terrace is 22 by 55 feet. This is roughly the same size as the enclosed part, which is 55 by 28 feet, forming 1540 square feet of internal living space. It is important to point out that this house was never intended for permanent living, only as a vacation home, explaining the absence of laundry and storage spaces. First, we're gonna take a look at the dining area, which is placed in a corner of windows, giving you the feeling of eating at the edge of a grass field. Mies van Rohe was also a brilliant furniture designer. All the furniture in the house is designed by him, making it an example of total art, a complete embodiment of his vision on architecture. Living here is like walking in Mies van Rohe's imagination. Edith Farnsworth loved to write poetry, and therefore she needed this desk, which was custom designed for the house, with a built-in leather desk pad, a hidden drawer, and unique-looking bookends. In front of the desk is a lounge chair, and next to it is the sitting area. Even the steel minimalist fireplace is perfectly in style with the house. The couch could be used as a second bed and is the only place for guests to spend the night. The chairs used in the sitting area are in some photos toucan head chairs, but in other photos the more famous Barcelona chairs. While the house has a strong contrast with the landscape from outside, the same landscape is ever present inside. Opening the interior to the nature is another trademark of the international style, explaining the choice for the large windows. The white columns, ceiling and floor have the same effect as the frame of a painting. The white lines accentuate the landscape, bringing more significance to nature than when the same landscape is seen from outside, without the wide frame. The bookcase also functions as a room divider, separating the living space from the sleeping area. Interesting is that it also functions as a wardrobe from the other side. The midsection opens towards the sitting area and is the bookcase, while the two other parts open towards the sleeping area and are used to store clothing. With the windows in 3 different directions, the sleeping area has the feeling of sleeping amongst the trees. Next to the bed is a door to the bathroom, which is placed in the wooden internal structure. This bathroom was used by Mrs. Farnsworth, while the other bathroom was used by visitors. Mies van Rohe went so far as to achieve complete interaction with nature that he wanted as few window frames as possible, allowing the landscape to be maximally visible from everywhere in the house. No door handles were allowed to disrupt the view, so the windows are just single sheets of glass that are placed between the columns. This indeed creates an enormous transparency, but it also means that none of the windows can slide open. Only in the sleeping area, Mies van Rohe made a concession to his principles. 2 small windows were placed to allow some fresh air on hot days. Next to the bed is the entrance to the kitchen. The open kitchen is placed at the right side of the wooden structure, and it also functions as a corridor that connects the bedroom with the dining area. Like everything in the house, the kitchen is modest and simple, with clean straight lines. The sink and stove are made of steel. Here you see that the wooden structure does not reach all the way to the ceiling, leaving a space open at the top, which again enlarges the feeling of space. Here is a door that leads to the second bathroom, which was used by the visitors of the house. Next to the shower is a small door that leads to the boiler room, which is placed in the middle of the core. The boiler was used to heat the water for the shower in the kitchen. Underneath the house is only one tube. Cold water was pumped up through a pipe that led to the boiler room, while dirty water was discharged through another pipe in the same tube. The boiler room also heated the water of the underfloor heating system. Despite its reputation as an iconic masterpiece, the Farnsworth House is also considered one of the most unpractical homes of all time, and is often called a beautiful disaster. I think, however, that if the structure was intended as a pavilion or an exhibition space, the quality of the design would not be overshadowed by its unpracticality. Keep in mind that Mies van Rohe previously designed the Barcelona Pavilion, a similar structure that was intended as a showroom and never as a home, and which is now considered as one of the best designs of the 20th century. I also think that the conflict between Ludwig and Edith was caused by miscommunication. Farnsworth had promised him complete creative freedom, but she thought that he would still design a livable home. Mies van Rohe, from his side, saw her more as a patron than as an actual client, who would put her needs aside in favor of his goals and dreams, making the final result more an experiment than an actual home. Despite all the controversies, you cannot deny that it had an enormous influence on the way buildings are constructed today, and it inspired the design of many other homes that are actually very comfortable, making it one of the most important designs in the history of architecture.